Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest Dr. Michael Newsom. Dr. Newsom, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Cross.
Man, it's a pleasure to have you here. And for those who are here with us for the first time, I'm asking you please to share this conversation with your connection. I can guarantee you that you will hear information, insights, and perspectives that you can apply to your life. But don't only keep it to yourself, share it with your connection. And for those who are here for the first time, my name is Dr. Richard A. Cross, and I'm the founder of the Black Male Impact. The Black Male Impact is where positive changes are inspired, where Black men share not only their success or successes, but the challenges that they have overcome to help us so we can be better on our journey. So, for those who are here with us for the first time, welcome. And for those who have been joining us during these conversations, welcome back to the Black Male Impact. But before we get into the conversation today, or before I give Dr. Newsom the opportunity to share more about himself, I will say this. He is the director of the Fatherhood, which is with the Montgomery County Office of Strategic Initiative. But I will give him the opportunity to share more about his journey, which we will still have some talks about that during the conversation. But I just want to say this to those who are here with us, because one of our responsibility is to make an impact, not tomorrow, today. We don't have to have all the resources to make the impact we want to make. Now is the time to rise, not someday, not when it's convenient, but today. Our legacy will not be written by what we said we would do, but by what we choose to do when the occasion demands it. So now is the time to make the impact that we're capable of making. So before we get into the conversation, as I said earlier, I will just give Dr. Newsom the opportunity to share more about himself before we start this conversation. Dr. Newsom.
Thank you, Dr. Cross. Well, as you mentioned, I'm the fatherhood director for Montgomery County, Ohio. Ohio is a state that also has an Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. So we're very serious about fatherhood in Montgomery County, in Ohio as well. So that being said, I was the first fatherhood director of an actual county of the 88 counties here in Ohio back in 2010. I've been with Montgomery County for almost 25 years. Here another month or so to be 25 years. That's just a great role to be in because it gives me not only the opportunity to help men who are going through their journey of fatherhood and manhood and those type of things, but of course, anytime you're helping fathers or parents in any way, you're having an impact on future generations, which is really great. I'm sure I'll allude to it more going forward as you ask me a few of these other questions. But I grew up with two great parents, so that really, was a guiding light for me. And I really feel like I'm on the pay it forward path, and I really, believe it's my obligation to take what I've been given as someone who grew up in a healthy two-parent home and try to emulate that or get that feeling for all of our citizens. So it's great to be here, and I look forward to our chat over the next few minutes.
Yes, man. Thank you. As you said, you start by having two parent or from a two parent household, and we know that all of us do have that experience, and sometimes by not having that experience, we may come short, especially when the father is not in the home. And as men on a whole, but as Black men, those guidance are really important, not just for ourselves, but to challenge some of the stereotypes and the stigmas and labels that have been put on us. And sometimes all we need is the right insight and guidance so we can break those cycle. Again, welcome to the black male impact. And again, just for those who are here with us, if you don't mind, please share this conversation with your network. Someone will benefit from what will be shared here today. So I'm going to start off with this question. What limited belief were you taught growing up that you had to unlearn to become who you are today? I know you said you grew up in two-parent household.
Mhm.
So I want to hear from your perspective.
Mhm.
What did you have to unlearn to become the person you are today?
Well, growing up in a small town, and again, I'm sure I'll allude to this throughout the broadcast, but growing up in a small town and being a town that was probably 15% African American at that time, the limitations sometimes that were tried to be placed upon us, were more external, in the community. Again, I had two excellent parents, still have them, fortunately, and so they certainly did not place limitations on us, which is important to note because of course that's your first, the main voice that you're going to have in your ears is your parents. But oftentimes, again, in a smaller town, you would, sometimes could be made to kind of try to, feel inferior, even though, I was an honor roll student, three-sport athlete, didn't get into any trouble and those different types of things. But at the same time, you can still feel limited because you're not treated, as an equal, or even, and definitely not, valued for maybe, the things that you're excelling at. Sports, of course, is very important to me, and again, I'll talk about that a little bit more later as well. But I think that some of those things where, no matter what we did, at times, we still, if we didn't have that strong family behind us to tell us, hey, you're just as good, you're better, or those type of things, I could see where, it could really have had a very negative impact on, and, to use your word, limitations placed on us. Because, and I saw it in some of my African American peers, no doubt about it, that didn't maybe quite have the backing that I had at home. And so I tried to help them. My parents did as well, and tried to be mentors for them, and give them the type of confidence, that we were able to have. So I would say, just societally, whether it was, back in my day, there's no way there was going to be an African American homecoming king or any of those type of things. That just wasn't going to happen. You just, a lot of the different type of things, you just felt like that's just not for me. That's just, you're not going to be the student council president, all those different type of things. So, those were probably the main ones that I dealt with, as I was coming up.
Well, as you say that, being that you excel academically,
Mhm.
but you have the notion that certain positions weren't going to be given to you. What impact that had on you?
So it had a great impact on me because, as you said, I excelled academically. But I mean, when you're the only African American in the honors class, for example, I mean, it always puts you, and it's something I still deal with as an adult now in some of the spaces where you're the only African American. I mean, that really puts a lot of pressure on you. I mean, you're kind of like an example of, the whole race at times.
Yeah.
It certainly puts you in a situation where you have to not only excel, but you have to pick your battles, on things that may be said that you don't like. You have to pick your battles on, ways that you may feel like you're being treated differently, even by a teacher or administration, and different things like that. So again, that's why I'm always such a huge proponent of diversity, because anytime that you have just one of anything, or a very limited number compared to a large number of other demographics, that puts those people that are in that extreme minority in a very compromised position. And so I found myself in that position, many times growing up, whether it was, again, the only black guy in honors English, or the only black guy at certain parties, and different things like that. So that really, again, was something that made me, that gave me some stress, growing up, that I probably didn't really need to have because there was, nothing quote unquote wrong with me except my skin's brown. So I think that again, is something that has stuck with me for sure.
Yeah, man, I can just imagine, as you said, being the one person in those spaces can be, um, not only demanding, but, stressful. As you mentioned that you will have to, it's like you're carrying the entire race on
Yeah,
your back, and you have to make sure you do the things right,
that's right.
because the judgment,
Yeah.
can be heavy because they say, look, yes, we know that you would fail. We know that you would not measure up.
Well,
So,
yeah, and you know that your performance could have an impact on future opportunities for others. So like, well, we let you in here, and then you didn't, perform exactly how we wanted you to, or how, we feel like you should, so we may be hesitant now to let another, African American in, especially a black male. So, that really, that pressure was always there.
man, I can just imagine. And
Mhm.
as you know, I know in your time you have heard, we have to be twice as good for the same opportunities
Yeah.
as others. But I'm
Yes.
really glad that you shared that experience,
Mhm.
because, as you said, sometimes even today it affects you, because,
Mhm.
we still are in spaces where it's only a limited amount of us, and
Yes.
sometimes not having us there, someone who we maybe can go and talk to help deal with the challenges, who we may be feeling comfortable with.
That's right.
Other people, will give us good advice, but
Sure.
sometimes, for even before you get to know people,
Mhm.
it can be a bit challenging to just walk up to someone who you don't really know, to talk about, whatever you have to deal with in those space. So my next question to you
Mhm.
is: can you share a moment
Mhm.
when you realized society had placed a ceiling on your potential, and
Mhm.
how you break through it?
Yeah, so again, there were a few moments, growing up. Again, one of the main ones that we always had issues with was maybe not being able to date whatever women we wanted to date, right? So a lot of times, again, especially if you were doing well, you're a good student, you stayed out of trouble, you didn't have any marks against you, more or less, your ability to maybe again, be seen with certain people, that message is sent loud and clear. And a lot of times you would hear even from friends that, white friends that, well, that's just not appropriate, or we don't think that that's right, and those different type of things. So of course, no matter what their intentions were, or whether they felt like they were, saying things to put you down, that's what you're going to get. So most of the limitations that I felt were societal like that. Probably because my mother was a teacher, I didn't really feel a lot of limits academically. Because I mean, she always said you can do and be whatever you want to be. And again, and I was very good at sports as well, which helped. But at the same time, it was a lot of time it was just the treatment of those things. Then I also went to a small liberal arts college, which I felt that some of those same situations. Again, ceiling is the great word because you felt like you could only get so far. You could only do certain things. And well, this is for everybody. This is for you, but only to a certain extent. I mean, we had places in the town where I grew up where there was a noted swim club where it was pretty well known that, I mean, it was just a fact, there weren't any African American families in it. And there were different experiences like that, and so then you're expected to come back and be, part of the gang, regular gang, and be, and even though you're, again, maybe getting better grades than everybody, a better athlete, and all those different type of things, there still was that little, mark on you for whatever reason. And so the way I overcame it was I just, the same way I do today, Dr. Cross, I just really try to achieve. I mean, I think, by achieving, oftentimes, and again, that's why I love sports so much because, if we're running down the street and we're racing, if I beat you, I beat you. It doesn't really matter what kind of what color we are, what age we are, any of that type of stuff. And so that's why I was always drawn to that because the scoreboard is the scoreboard. And so that that really helped me a lot in my youth, to be able to say, to go home with a lot of satisfaction sometimes of, yeah, you may have tried to limit me, but I handled my business, on the court or the football field or baseball diamond or whatever it was. And of course, I also got better grades, so again, I think achieving is really one of the best ways to try it. And that's what I pass on to my kids is, you just have to, you mentioned it earlier, they have to be twice as good, thing, so my thing was always just do the best you can, and hopefully the chips will fall where they may.
And I really like your perspective on sports. And if we approach life with that analogy, and
Mhm.
knowing that if you want to win, if you want to be the best,
Mhm.
all you need to do is put in the work. It's
That's
not
right.
just about how talented you are,
That's right.
but if you want to be the best, put in the work.
That's
And
right.
once you put in the work, well, it's important that you believe in yourself, which you alluded to, being that your mom instilled that in you.
Mhm.
But if we put in the work, achievement will speak for itself
That's right.
because they cannot deny you once you show up and do your part. They can say what they want to say. They can have whatever opinions they want to have. But
Mhm.
you know what? I'm at the line and I'm going to give my best. And
Mhm.
that's a really great reminder for all of us as men and as Black men in particularly that, there may be limitations,
Mhm.
but don't let what's out there stop us from doing the work that is necessary so we can get better or become the best version of ourselves. I really appreciate you saying or sharing that part of your journey
Mhm.
and make the comparison to sports
Mhm.
because and that is something, man, we need to really take that in consideration. If we
Mhm.
want to be the best, no
Yes.
matter how talented the others are,
Mhm.
put in the work, and we may be able to outshine even those who want to put limits on us. I really appreciate you sharing that part of your journey and your story. So, my next question
Mhm.
to you: in what ways have you challenged the
Mhm.
stereotypes or boxes people tried to put you in?
Mhm. So one of the main ways that I've always challenged those boxes is to, again, and sports is going to come up a lot, mainly because I don't, I've always pushed back on the always a dumb jock, or, just because you can run fast and jump high, da 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 da. That is a compliment, to what we do. Our education system is very can be very anti-sports, mainly because of the personnel being mainly female, a lot of times. And so I think that what we the way that I push back on that is, I've said, you have to understand that sports is a lot more than just running fast and jumping high. And it's an and thing, and it helps me. I missed probably, Dr. Cross, I probably missed 5 days of school my whole 12, a K through 12 years. And yes, I was fortunate to be very healthy. Let me be clear about that. But one of the main reasons I didn't miss school is because I wanted to go to practice. And I wanted to, if you didn't go to practice, you couldn't play on Friday, so that led to my great attendance, which leads to great academics. That's one of our kids' big issues is they don't go to school. So I mean, so those type of things go hand in hand. So the way I've challenged that is say, yes, I'm an athlete. Yes, I listened to hip hop growing up, and I still listen to it. And that doesn't have anything to do with me, achieving my doctorate degree. It probably helped it, as a matter of fact. So I mean, this stereotype. I've never been an either or guy. Like, well, put down that, quit dribbling that ball and pick up a book. I mean, I think they complement each other.
I
And
agree.
and I think that we really, do people do. I mean, if somebody's really good at something, as long as it's not something illegal. But I mean, if somebody's really good at, dribbling a ball or catching a football or whatever, why would you want to take the one thing that they excel at and trivialize it or make it so that it's not that important. So I mean, how's that going to make me feel? Like, wow, okay, well, running fast doesn't mean anything. Come over here and do this book report. Well, I mean, it means something. So I mean, so let's find some book report for you to do about Jesse Owens. or whatever, so that you can, we can connect it to what you're doing. And so those are the type of things I've always thrived in, is trying to break down those stereotypes of, you can't play three sports, or you can't do this and still get good grades, or you can't do this and you can't do that. And I mean, I think that's something our kids need to hear. And I've always tried to really exemplify that and say, this is, I'm Dr. Newsom, yes, but I'm going to be glued to my seat on Sunday watching the NFL. There's nothing wrong with that. Those are not mutually exclusive experiences right there. So that's been my main method in trying to break down some stereotypes.
Well, and I really, as you say, most of the questions may go back to sports,
Hmm.
and that being an athlete really don't really take anything really away. It actually adds to you
Yeah.
as a person. I remember I came across an article maybe 10 years ago, where, at first, major companies never
Hmm.
want to employ student athletes.
Uh-huh.
And then they realize that the most driven and committed
That's right.
employees
Hmm.
are those people who they employed who were student athletes.
Right.
Then the focus shift. So it
Hmm.
goes back to what you said. Yes, you can be an athlete and also do well academically. And some of
Hmm.
the things that we don't see often, which I shared in one of my presentations with some high school students, I put a picture. I
Hmm.
don't remember the guy's name right now. He's in the NFL
Hmm.
and he graduated with 4.0. I
Mm.
asked them, who is this guy? They
Yeah.
didn't know. But I asked them some of the rappers they know.
Yeah.
But they're not realizing that they can excel academically even
That's right.
though they are good at sports. And what I
Hmm.
also find is that sports have some skills, some things that
Oh,
are easily transferred to the
easily.
classroom,
Hmm.
because it's the same thing to be successful as an athlete.
Yes.
It's the same habits
Yes.
to be
Yes.
successful academically, which I know you can agree with, being that you have been successful in both areas.
Yes. Well, it's that consistency, and as you said, practicing. I mean, how do you get better at reading and writing? You practice, you read, you write, you stay consistent, you do that. Same way you get better at dribbling the ball. And so, a big part again, which concerns me, and is so great, this program and this movement that you have, is, that we can't, as leaders, we can't, place limitations on people.
No.
The limitations are often there about, again, either or you have to do this, you have to do that. Hey man, excel at everything. I mean, you can really put it out there and do the best you can at a lot of different areas, at the same time. And I think that we get too carried away with that. Whether it's certainly I've experienced as an African American. One of the big ones that I experienced was with my son. When my wife and I would go to the teacher conferences sometimes, and they would say things like, "Oh, well, he's doing really well. He's got a C." And we'd be like, "Wait a minute, that's not that's not doing well." And so, but again, you think that those, again, I think there may be a gender piece in there too, but
Mhm.
also, as far as African Americans, you have to be very careful, that you don't allow, those type of as you say, ceilings to be put on you.
Well, so that means they lower the expectation,
Hmm.
and sometimes just by lowering the expectations, we fall where they put the ceiling,
That's
because
right.
that's what they expect of us, and then we just do just as they expect. And that's one
Exactly.
thing that we have to, as you said, we have to be careful of,
Yes.
not to let society place limits on
That's right.
us.
That's right.
So my next question to
Mhm.
you, and were you about to say something?
No, I was just going to say, lastly, on that point, I mean, and that's why people like you and I have to be visible as well. I try to be, a little bit understanding of folks that are extreme introverts that don't want to go out and talk to anybody. But I'm like, people, these kids and other people, not only kids, they need to see successful people, and
Correct.
and that especially that look like us. I mean, because where else are they going to get their, their role models, if you will? Not that we're perfect people, but
Correct.
where are they going to get that information? And my dissertation was on lack of black male teachers in Dayton public schools. I mean, Dayton public schools is 65% black, as far as the student body, and the teaching for black males is 4.4%, which is sadly twice the national average. K through 12 is 2% black male teachers. So my point being, if you, of course, I work in fatherhood. There's a lot of places that they don't have fathers, right? So you don't have a black father at home, and you go to school, you don't see any black males. Maybe if you play sports, you might have a shot at seeing one, but I mean, it could legitimately, folks of both races, of every race, grow up and not really see a black, not even know a black man until you, I mean, all the way up through 18. You see
Correct.
them on TV, and, you bump into them at the store. But I mean, as far as having an actual relationship with one, so those are the type of things, again, that, is our obligation, to stay visible, and try to lead the way a little bit.
That is important. And
Mhm.
black men, to us, and that's a really important reminder,
Mhm.
that we stay visible. Um,
Mhm.
because there's a quote out there that say it's easier to become what you see. So the
Mm.
more they see us, the
Okay.
more they will have the aspiration to be us, or even better than
That's
us.
right.
But they, by seeing us, they'll say, you know what? Yes, I can, and I can even go further or do more than they are currently doing. I really appreciate that reminder. So
Mhm.
my next question is, what does thinking beyond limits
Mhm.
look like in your everyday life?
So thinking beyond limits is really interesting for me, Dr. Cross, because I work for the county, which is, of course, a government organization, and so and by its nature, any government entity is going to be somewhat risk averse, right? We don't. That's one of the things they hit you with, when you first start your career. We don't want to be on the front page. We don't want, we don't want to get any bad press or different things like that. So I've always tried to push the limits of, some of the things we may not have done in the past, as far as reaching out to the community. Certainly, in a safe way, and in a way that's just only going to help the community. But a lot of times, we have to, whether it's in our work life, or just out, with what we do, with whether it's our church or other organizations. Thinking outside the box, is a great, it's a great saying, but that really should be the norm. I mean, if you're not trying to, again, I hate to keep using athletic analogies, but I mean, if you're not trying to improve yourself, or trying to get better, then I mean, that's really what it's all about. I mean, if you're a good athlete, you could be 10 for 11, shooting the ball, and you're thinking about that one you missed. I mean, because that's just how we think. And so this is what that's how I push the limits, is by trying to come up with innovative and new ways, to reach folks, anytime we have an event and the turnout is not what I hoped it would be, my first thought is not, what is wrong with these people? I put this event out here and they didn't show up. My first thought is, how could I have, made that more attractive to them, to show up, and so I really try to talk to our 501(c)(3)s and nonprofits about having that mindset as well, because they complain to me. Again, I work for the county, so I'm kind of, the de facto leader in a lot of these areas, and so they will complain to me, well, I put the flyers out there, we had free food and nobody was I said, you have to think, what could you have done? Think about the time it was, think about, all these different type of things. It's your job to make it as attractive and user friendly for the clients as possible. So pushing beyond limits, to me, is more of a, it's yes, I'm going to do the best I can, but I'm always trying to put opportunities out there, so that our people, whether it's African Americans or an entire community, have the opportunity to go beyond their limits, which is really, really what, because again, as I'll go back to the beginning of my conversation, I had the two parents pushing me, saying, come on, you can do it, you can do it. Everybody doesn't have that, as you said, so we try to be that for them, in certain ways, and say, hey, we come out to this event. I know it might look like something small, but while we're there, we're going to talk to you. We're going to talk to your kids. We're going to give you some job opportunities, all those different type of things. So, to answer your question, I mean, the limitations thing is just really about creating opportunity. That's my biggest issue with anything to do with the social services or society, etc. People are going to do what they're going to do, but I don't like some people having the information and the others don't. That's where I get a little, fired up sometimes, to be honest with you. Whether it's guys going into court and they don't know what the hearing's about or why they're there, different things like that. So I really try to make sure that I, break through the limitations by saying, hey, you have the right to know this. You should know
Right.
that. You should know this. Go get that information. And if you don't know where it is, I'll help you get it. And so that's probably my biggest method in that area.
And that's great. And just to go over what you've said,
Hmm.
and when it comes to going beyond, the limits,
Hmm.
and you said something that is really important that I believe we all need to apply. When we do something and it doesn't go as we want it to go, let's not blame who didn't show up,
Right.
but look to ourselves and see what can we do differently to make sure we attract the people we want to attract to the event. Because sometimes, yes, they may not see it or hear about it, but what can we do when it comes to beyond our limits
Hmm.
to be better? We have to look within ourselves and see what can I do different. And it's the same thing that's happening around us. Because when things are not going as planned, or whatever systems are there, let's not just look at the system. What can I do?
Right.
Being that, yes, we know that there are barriers. There may be things that prevent us from get into certain places.
Yes.
But yes, we also see individuals thriving and making greater impact. So, what are they doing that I can do or I can learn? Or what do I know that I need to share if I'm the one, making that greater impact? As
Hmm.
you said, you don't want to keep the information that you know to yourself. When others around us or around you need the information so they can get to what they want or achieve whatever goals they have for themselves. So I think that is important, especially when we're talking about thinking beyond limits, not limiting ourselves based on what's happening, but challenging ourselves. First, question ourselves and say, what can I do differently to
Yeah.
make this work?
Yeah, and trying to allow them, trying to keep them from putting limitations on themselves. I was just talking to a group of 18 to 29-year-old guys the other day, and we talk about, of course, I'm the fatherhood guy, so we talk about things to do with parenting a lot. But this thing about having children out of wedlock, I'm telling these guys that is not something you have to do. I mean, that is, and I told them, and I'll say it here, there are so many things that happen to all citizens, everybody that's out of your control. I mean, you can't, you're not going to be able to, when if they pass an ordinance or something, and this happens or whatever. I mean, some of those things are beyond your control. Those things that are in our control, like that, we have to capitalize on it. We have to put ourselves in a situation of, when I was 18 and when I was coming up through high school, anybody I saw in the streets or in society would say to me, Mike, where are you going to college? They wouldn't say, what are you doing after high school? Are you going to grad? You think you're going to graduate? The expectations on me was I'm going to college, right? So some of these guys, it's like, well, the expectation is, by the time I'm 18 or 19 or 20, I need to have two or three kids, and I mean, and that, again, is a huge, that in itself puts huge limitations on what you're able to do. Or, of course, being incarcerated and having a record, it puts limitations on your employment. So a lot of the behaviors, lead to these limitations. And so we try to talk to them about that as much as possible.
And that is important for our community
Mhm.
because, as you said, sometimes that what is set as, especially being a man,
Right.
the things that they do, which can later affect them or cause them to continue a cycle
Right.
that, their kids end up in and may not get out of it because we see some of that happening within the community. And if we don't take those initiatives
Mhm.
as individual first to challenge the status quo, to challenge the stereotypes, to break some cycles, it will only continue. Sorry. And that leads me to this question. What social, no, how was your definition of success evolved
Mm.
as you have grown and shed external expectations?
Yeah, so I think I was fortunate again with my family because my family always felt really successful, even though we didn't have a lot of money. So again, my father was a maintenance man at Central State University. My mother was a middle school teacher, and we had three kids in the family. So certainly we weren't, we knew where our next meal was coming from, and we, went on vacations and led a good life. But at the same time, I was never really a money chaser, as I grew up. I didn't, they didn't instill that in me. They didn't say, well, you got to have this much money or, your life's not going to be successful. There were folks that I knew that whose families had more money than me, especially when I got to college. I met a lot of kids whose families had a lot more money than mine, but would have traded families with me in a heartbeat because my parents were present and they really cared about us and try to do the best that they can. So I always kind of had that mindset to begin with, but to be honest, Dr. Cross, it's even grown throughout the years. I feel even more. My success is about feeling to use a word from your show, impact. If, when I'm having impact, that really feels successful to me. It's very rare that I come home from a day of work and say, I'm not sure I impacted anybody today, which is, a blessing to be able to have an employment, have employment like that and be able to, have a good wage where I can support my family. So, I think that it really, and, again, back to the leadership role, we try to, instill that in some of the younger guys that, hey, this is, there's nothing wrong with making money, but at the
Correct.
same time, you're going to have to be, fulfilled in some way. That money is not going to just not going to last forever as far as making you happy because even as I've gotten more successful over the years, the extra money didn't do nearly as much for me as it did, as when I was thinking, wow, I've gotten promoted or I've done this or that. This gives me the opportunity to help even more people. And I mean, that was really much more of my mindset and my definition of success as opposed to the financial success or bigger house, nicer car, and those type of things.
Well, you are correct. Once, especially when you come from what they would say at the bottom or come from
That's right.
average or middle
Yeah,
class or lower class,
that's right.
once you start to accumulate certain
Hmm.
things,
Hmm.
you realize it's not the things are not really what you really, really want.
That's right.
Because, and we have seen people who have like so much and they
Mhm.
are unhappy
Yes.
because they're not, um, you know, having a meaningful life. I would
Right.
say, they have things they can enjoy,
Hmm.
but when you really look at it, it's what we do for humanity that gives
Mm.
us the most, or what we do for our families, so our
Right.
families can, feel comfortable, and so we can also feel, respected in the home and all that type of stuff. So it's those are the things that really becomes valuable. Yes, we need the money, and I
Hmm.
have no problem with that, but
That's right.
once you come from a lower class and you start
Hmm.
to accumulate things, you realize that life is more than the things. You buy all these things, and some of the things that you purchase, they're just there.
Right.
You're not using them.
That's right.
But that's what happened. You think, because you're growing up and that's what you want.
Yeah.
But once you start having them, you realize that life is more than.
I agree, and let me be clear. It is not, I tell the young guys this, it is not easy in this capitalist society, to think that way. I mean,
Right.
because I mean, it's very easy to fall into, and I mean, in some methods, I'm also an adjunct professor at our local, prison,
Okay.
and so it is a female prison, but a lot of those ladies, one of my favorite exercises, like in the first day of classes, I say, who in here had a private attorney? I mean, if I have 20 students, if one of them raises their hands, it's pretty unusual. So I mean, there is certainly something to be said for having financial resources
Correct.
and how it can it can improve you. But Rarely, I don't know anybody on here has ever quoted Kanye before, but I'm about to. But Kanye in one of his songs famously said, "Having money's not everything, not having it is," which mainly means just because you have a lot of money, that's not going to make you happy. But if you don't have any, you're going to have problems.
Correct.
So I mean, so certainly we have to. I think we have to. There's that sweet spot there of, hey, we need to have enough money that we can, in case we have some problems, we can deal with them and we
Yeah.
can live in a safe area and all those type of things. But we can't just keep chasing that dollar because that's not going to fulfill us.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The money, really helps, with certain things, but
Yes,
um, yeah, not having it can, you can have a lot of problems. But yeah,
that's
as
right.
you said, your life need meaning beyond just having the money.
That's right.
And we have seen many people who have money and still seems not to
That's right.
be happy with their lives. So my next, sorry, my next question to you is: was there ever a time you felt pressure
Mm,
to shrink your dreams?
mm.
What made you expand them again?
Wow, that's a great question. So yeah, yes, of course. I mean, I've felt that pressure because, it's just easier sometimes, to say, well, I'm only gonna, go this far, or, you have people saying, hey, great job, you're doing a good job. I'll go back to example with my son of, always getting a C, he's doing well. I mean, it's easy for sometime to keep that that to have that mindset with my the fatherhood initiative. Again, I was the first fatherhood initiative director, really in the state, so also with Montgomery County. So the point being, there was a blank slate on that, and so when I would start to do some small things, people got really excited about it and were like, oh wow, you're doing this, man, that's really cool that you're putting these groups together with these dads talking whatever. And I'm like, thank you, but the whole time I'm thinking this is just the beginning. I mean, we're not going to, I'm not stopping here. This is really just, the tip of the iceberg. And so but again, there are always times when you're going to feel like, well, I could just, do this, and continue to get paid and, have an okay life and, all those different type of things. But I mean, again, I think you have to really go back to that motivation, not only for yourself, but those of us who have been given some resources, some talents, you really have to, I think it's your obligation to use them to help people. And so that is always what has always kind of pushed me, where I'm like, man, Mike, you can't just sit here and take these gifts that you have and just say, well, I'm doing as much as I can, and hey, it's good enough. I'm doing more than most people, so let me just leave it at that. It's my obligation to go in and bring up some things to the county, and they look at me like, you want to do what? But that's okay, because it's not about my ego or about them thinking I'm smart or crazy or whatever it is. It's about me coming up with ideas that are going to help the community, and especially the African American community. So I think that that's what has really helped me is seeing other people grow,
Correct.
around me, whether it's again my kids, or it's other people in society again that maybe that didn't grow up with the type of family that I did.
And I really like that word, obligation.
Mhm.
I think, especially once we start to achieve some form of success,
Yes,
because even though we put in the effort, there are people who put in the effort and still don't achieve some of the
that's
things
right.
that we achieve.
That's right.
So I think we do have an obligation to help others. We do
Yes.
have an obligation to pull people up. We do have
Mhm.
an obligation to help others to see some of the things that we see. And if
Yeah,
we get the resources, why not?
that's right.
Help those people who, especially when we're entrusted
Yes.
to
Yes.
help them. I do love that word. I
Yeah.
remember when I used that word a couple years ago in one of my presentation.
Uh,
So I understand, that we do have
yeah.
an obligation
Yeah. And it's
because
about.
again, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's about creating opportunities, for others. I mean, there's no doubt, that once opportunity, is given, I mean, everybody will achieve. There's no inferiority on black males or anything like that. The only deficits that we have most of the time is opportunity. And so those of us that have the opportunity to give opportunities, we have to make sure we take advantage of that.
Yes, yes, we do. Don't let's not get there and forget
That's
that
right.
we have an obligation to help, especially those who may not have the connection. Because, as you say, we don't have the opportunities, but sometimes we don't even have the connection to get the opportunities, and that's
Exactly.
we have to be mindful of that. So, if we do have the opportunity or the resources to give or to help, let's do so. And that's for all of us men, black men who are here listening to this conversation today. So, how do you stay grounded
Mm.
in your identity while still pushing yourself to
Mhm.
evolve? I know you talk about you don't put limits on yourself. You try to push yourself, but
Mhm.
how do you stay in your identity and
Mhm.
still force yourself to evolve or to be better?
That's a great one too. So I think being around the right people. I have a great. I've already talked about my family plenty, but I have a great set of friends as well. That will help you a lot of times stay grounded. They're all successful guys. But at the same time, we go way back, so we know each other's limitations, and maybe can give each other a jab every now and then about some of the things maybe we didn't do well or that we messed up or that we could do better. So I think a lot of times that really helps you to stay grounded because you're like, wow, when you really start feeling good about yourself, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't hurt for somebody to say, hey, you could be doing more. Or I remember, yeah, that father banquet you do now has got 400 people at it, but I remember the first couple years, so don't act like you had it all figured out from the start,
That's
and
right.
different stuff like that. So I think, but again, and you have to be willing to receive that type of constructive criticism. I've always said I'm very fortunate to be an even killed and not very emotional guy. So I have a lady, a quick story I'll tell you, a lady that's on my fatherhood committee now. She's a little Jewish lady. She's a retired teacher, and the way she got on my fatherhood committee was she came to one of our events, and then she, it was on a Friday night, and I was feeling great about it. We, did this stuff for these Dayton Public Schools kids, and it was just really cool. And she came to it. And Monday morning, I came in, and she had sent this huge email about how terrible the program was. And so, I, like I said, I took a little walk, and then responded to her email, and basically said, if you're so smart, join the committee. Which she did. And so, those type of that's one of the best ways to stay grounded is to not take things too personally that people say about, especially about your program. I mean, if somebody, somebody makes a crack about my appearance or something, then that's something different. But I mean, but if we're talking about, the just the work, I mean, that's a great way to stay grounded is to say, wow, maybe they're right about that. Let me consider that instead of having this, how dare you attitude. I know everything and I got everything figured out. One of my best traits, I think I'm a lifelong learner, and so I want to make sure that I'm always honoring that and acting in that way.
You said you have shared some valuable takeaways just now, especially when it comes to stay grounded, identity, and still push ourselves to evolve.
Mhm.
Where you shared, you are always around the right people. That's what you share. Stay around the right people
Mhm.
and be a lifelong learner is important. But what I think is the most important reminder to all of us from what you just shared was be willing to take criticism.
Yes.
Don't take things personally
Mhm.
because you could have responded differently to the
Mhm.
lady because you felt you did a great job,
Right.
and she point out, and sometimes that's how we grow, that's how
Mhm.
we evolve, that's how our programs
Okay.
get to where we'd want it to be just
Exactly.
by being open to someone else's opinion. If it
Mhm.
is, we can sometimes know if the person is of bad intent
Right.
or if they genuinely want us to be better.
Mhm.
And so it's upon us to really analyze what the person is saying, and if they're right, yes, let's make the adjustment. And as men, we sometimes do take those feedback personally. So I'm really glad that you share that right now with us here during this conversation, because I think it's really important,
Mhm.
especially when we're in the public eye.
Yes.
We have to know what to ignore, of
Yes.
course, but we have to be willing to take those criticisms.
Yeah, and Dr. Cross, part of it is from what I talked about earlier. Sometimes it's we're the only ones in the space, and
Correct.
so that can make it even more difficult to accept criticism because it's kind of like how dare you? I'm the only one here, trying to do this, and then you're gonna, I mean, nobody else is doing anything in this space, and here I am trying to help these kids or do this or do that, and then you're gonna come and criticize it, and so that can really get you back up even more sometimes I think so I agree with everything you said.
Man, that is just a great reminder, because
Mhm.
as men, as black men especially, we sometimes take those criticism personally, and it's sometimes because of what may have happened before,
Right.
because we know not all feedback are genuine.
Mhm.
People just want to get under your skin just because you may be, as you said, you're the only one there, and they
Mhm.
want to get you off, for you to act out of character. But I'm also glad what you did. You took a walk,
Yeah.
and then you come back and respond. And that is
Okay.
something that I had to learn,
Mhm.
because I remember my one of my when I had a situation when I just start in this career in education.
Mhm.
I respond on the spot, and when I shared what I said to the person, a mentor of mine said, "Man, no, you should not. That only make things worse,
Right.
for you." So I learned my lesson back then. Sometimes you even have to send it to someone for them to read
Right.
before, because you are who you are, and you may be a bit more blunt, so you may have to get someone to look at your response
Right.
before.
And we're passionate about our work. I
Correct.
mean, so like you said, we are who we are, and we're also passionate about our work. So that's anytime somebody's taking a jab at, something that you feel is very close to your heart, you're gonna, sometimes react a certain way.
That is true. That is
Mhm.
true. I have so many more questions, and I see that we're almost at the top of the hour. But
Mhm.
let's see how many more questions we can ask before we get to the end of this conversation.
Mhm.
But I will say this before we end:
Mhm.
this will not be our only conversation here.
Okay.
So my next question to you is: who or what
Mhm.
helped you realize that you are more than what society tells you? I know you talk about the early part of your journey
Mhm.
where your parents
Mhm.
encourage you,
Mhm.
tell you that
Mhm.
you are not limited.
Mhm.
But are there any others
Sure.
who have really instilled that belief in you?
Definitely. Again, playing three sports, I had some coaches that were really instrumental for me. My basketball coach just passed away last year. He
Sorry
was
to
my
hear that.
basketball, yeah, so he was my basketball and baseball coach. And I mean, just really, again, to me, it really highlights the importance of that mentorship. Because as I said, I have a great dad, and so can you imagine somebody that didn't have a great dad? That the impact that a coach like my coach would have had also colleagues. I mean, I try to take from and I don't limit it to guys that are our age or older or whatever. I mean, there are some young guys doing some great stuff, and so I really am always constantly trying to take from them, just pick their brain, whether it's pick their brains or watch how they're moving in certain spaces. I think I'm very fortunate. I have enough, I am a confident guy, but also I think I have enough humility. I never really was somebody that thought I had it all figured out. I was very always open to being around people that, as I say, surrounding yourself with smart people. So that probably is my main method in doing things. Certainly, I have a doctorate, so I know how to research and read, things as well. But I would say, from my the biggest impact is other leaders and watching what they do. And sometimes it's clients. I mean, I don't think we, I won't speak for everybody, but I know.
I just lose your yeah. So I'm not hearing you. I'm still not hearing you. Um, so I know Dr. Newsom will be back. Sharon, go ahead. Um, speak. So let's see if I'm hearing you. Yeah, you may have to disconnect the headphones. Uh, no, I'm still not hearing. Yeah, so I think what Dr. Newsom was saying is that we not realizing how the people we help can also provide insights to us as well. So sometimes we don't give the people that we serve
Right.
enough credit because being that we are the ones providing solutions or answers to them, our guidelines, but they too share valuable insights and perspective and help us even to understand the work that we are doing. Go ahead
Right,
and
and when
say,
you can you hear me now? Yeah.
yes, I can.
And so when you really think about it logically, I tell folks all the time, so some of these will just stick on, black males. So a lot of these guys that maybe are incarcerated or have been incarcerated, the circumstances under which they have grown up and, they became, successful. Sometimes it was doing something illegal, don't get me wrong. But I mean, at the same time, they've been able to, achieve in very more difficult circumstances than many of us,
Correct.
so to not use that talent that they have, and acknowledge that, acknowledge those things is, I think, is a huge mistake because, you can really learn a lot from our clients.
Man, I think that is so true because everything we need to learn to make the impact, we may not find it in a book, but from their experience, and no, the primary experience or the person who experienced it, their knowledge is more credible than what's
That's
in the
right.
book because it's their experience
That's right.
and what may have caused it.
Yes.
We have to look at it. Although some of what we are reading are, from what people have shared and what have been researched. But if
Yes.
we're talking to the person who have been through, their response, I think it's more potent. I think it's more, I would say, valuable
Hmm.
in getting to the bottom of what we are trying to solve. And you said something that I would just want to mention and how important it is. You mentioned mentoring and being mentored by others and mentorship and how important that is, and being exposed to other leaders, especially and even when you're an athlete, you have the coaches who mentor you, help you to realize your own potential. But the thing that I want to stress right now is humility,
Hmm.
that we may know what we know, we may have done the research, we may have read all the books, but it's to exercise humility, despite what position we think we have,
Right.
what we think we have accomplished, because again, we're dealing with people, and we don't know
That's right.
who will be able to provide us the insight, because that's how things work at times. We just have to be humble enough
Hmm.
to be receptive or to be open, to listen to those who are in our presence, because we have to realize that we don't just run into people just by accident.
Right.
We all walk different journey to get to this point.
Mhm.
So maybe it's for a reason. We run into this person. But being that we are at the top of the hour, I'm going to ask two more questions.
Okay.
But the first question I want to ask you before I ask the final question, the final question is more so about what you do and for them to find you. But I'll get to that point. But how do you empower the Black men to challenge limitations placed on them?
Yeah, so I empower them by making sure they have as much information as possible. So one of my favorite ones that I do, and a lot of times I'll try to keep things light, to get a few laughs, and that oftentimes gets guys communicating a little bit more. So that same young group that I talk to on occasion, the 18 to 29-year-old males, I like to bring up a vasectomy. You know what I mean? And they'll be like, what are you talking? Isn't that where they cut them off and all this other stuff, right? So I talk about that because I remember when I was growing up, my dad, again, being middle class, I remember one of his buddies coming over and he had one and whatever. So from an early age, I knew what that was, So, we're talking about having babies and we're talking about all these different type of things. I try to take away their limitations by saying, here, listen, when somebody brings up this term, I want you to know what it is, because that gives them greater comfort as far as going into certain rooms or going into certain experiences, because they're like, oh, wow, he was just talking about that the other day. I know what I'm supposed to do about child support. I know what I'm supposed to do about, this and that. I know where to go to find a job. And, and he always talked about the fact that everybody didn't have the same opportunities or grow up with the same choices, which I definitely want to talk to you about the next time we come together.
Yeah.
But I mean, but those type of things, I mean, I just really feel like knowledge is power in those spaces. And the fact that you tell them, hey, listen, you can do this. You can go apply for school. You can do that or whatever. And also make sure I let them know, everybody, all these people that look like they have everything figured out, they don't. They from a barely early time, they just went in there and said, hey, how can I apply for school? How can I do this? You have to be willing to ask questions and, again, have that confidence in yourself to say, there's nothing dumb about not knowing how to apply for college. If nobody's ever shown you that, how would you know? And so I'll use sometimes, a lot of times, sports analogies. There's people that, in other countries never had a basketball in their hand, and so, if they said, how do you dribble the ball? You wouldn't go, oh, you're so dumb. They'd say, I've never seen this before, so, so it's those type of things where, I really try to let them know, yes, it's not about being smart or not smart. It has a lot more to do with opportunity and being willing to go find the answers. So that's the main way that I do that.
Man, I really appreciate what you do and how well you provide the information, as you said, because sometimes that's all we need
That's it.
to make the progress. Because sometimes it's the lack of knowledge
Right.
that prevents us from excelling, not knowing where to go to find the information we need,
Yeah.
so we can excel. And sometimes we can Google the information, but
Right.
getting the direct answer or from a person, I
Yes.
think it is more far better
Yes.
than Google. Yes, we can research some information and we can get some insights, but when we get it from the person who say, go down that block, or go to this address
Yes.
to find what you need to find, I think it's much better. Or talk to this person.
Right. Talk
I
to this
think,
person.
yeah, I think that is much better. And if we know,
Right.
why not provide that knowledge to those, especially when we are entrusted to serve them. Uh,
That's right. And
uh,
just real quick, just and also dispelling the rumors about some of those things, right?
all right,
Because they've heard stuff from maybe their families or their peers, hey, don't do this, don't do that, you can't go to school, you can't, and so that I think that's a big for those of us that have opportunity and maybe know a few things and a few people, is very important for us to break down those walls for them as well.
man, that is important. And we are at the end of today's conversation. I have so many more questions that I wanted to ask, but there will be a next time for this conversation. But for those who are here with us, I want to say thank you for being here. But before we go,
Mhm.
where can the listeners find you and support the great work that you're doing.
Sure. I'd say the best way to find me is on our county website, which is mcohio.org. And you just go to MC, which stands for Montgomery County, Ohio. It's all one word, .org. And if you want to put /fatherhood, you can. But the fatherhood program will pop up, and it'll give you information about everything that that I'm doing, or a lot of the bigger things that I do, and also the way to contact me. So I always love to talk to folks about fatherhood and about leading in the community, and how we can, try to be those good role models and examples. And really, I'm all about meeting people where they are and trying to get them to be the best them. I don't want you to be Mike Newsom. Mike Newsom is a certain person, or Dr. Cross. But I want you to be the best you that you can be, and whatever that looks like. I want to try to help you get there. So. Yeah, that's the best way to reach us, mcohio.org. And I always look forward to talking to folks that are trying to build and help the community.
Man, thank you very much for sharing that. And that will be somewhere in the description for others who want to reach out to you who may not hear it today. So, again, for those who are here with us, I want to say thank you for being here on the Black Male Impact. And, one of our goal every time is to bring guests that we believe will share insights and perspectives that we all can benefit from as we continue on this journey. The Black Male Impact is where positive changes are inspired. Thank you for being here with us. Until next time.